Howdy, Ando again from Happy Life Martial Arts. My first formal martial arts training was in Taekwondo, ITF if you're interested. I stayed long enough to earn my first black belt, but I never wore it. Instead, I went out searching for a different art. And since some people have asked me why, today I thought I'd tell you. First off, if you click this video hoping to hear me bash Taekwondo, no, that's not going to happen. The fact is I learned many important lessons as a student of Taekwondo. At one point in my life, it was the perfect art for me. So if you're training in Taekwondo and it's the perfect art for you, keep going. But for me, eventually there were two reasons that convinced me to quit. One might sound a little silly, the other's more serious. Let's start with silly. Reason number one, fear of the future. Here's the thing. I wanted to find an art that I could still be pretty good at in my 60s, 70s, and dare I say beyond. But in Taekwondo, even in my physical prime, I found myself spending more time stretching and conditioning than actually practicing fighting skills, which is what I wanted to learn. Now, don't get me wrong, I believe in staying in shape, but I don't believe that I should have to be able to do a full split to be at my best. And it wasn't just me whining about this, by the way. My instructors were always complaining about how their backs hurt, or their legs were getting tighter, or how their bodies were slowing down. And these guys were in their 30s. Their 30s. Look, growing older is going to put limitations on everyone. I get that. But I got the feeling that if I stayed in Taekwondo, I would be facing more limitations than students of other arts. Can you practice Taekwondo without all the fancy high kicks? Of course you can. But I personally hated the idea of devoting years of my life to developing skills that would only get harder to do over time, not easier. I also didn't like the idea of possibly needing hip replacements. And yes, I know there are 60 and 70-year-old Taekwondo masters out there who can still kick like they're 20. Good for them. I just wasn't sure if I could be one of them. Bottom line, my fears and insecurities were telling me that if I stayed in Taekwondo, by the time I hit 60, I'd be breaking my bones instead of boards. The second reason I quit Taekwondo, in case you thought that first reason was a little silly, is that Taekwondo was 4 arts in one. I don't know about your school, but in my Taekwondo school, we practiced a lot of forms. We also practiced free sparring. But wait, there's more. We also practiced 3-steps and 1-steps. We also practiced self-defense techniques for grabs and chokes and weapons. We also spent a lot of time stretching and conditioning. We also broke boards. The way I saw it, we were being asked to improve 4 distinct sets of skills: forms, free sparring, prearranged sparring, and self-defense. Now, that wouldn't be a problem if the principles and movements were the same between each of the sets of skills, but they weren't. The principles and movements that we practiced in forms were completely different from the principles and movements that we practiced in sparring or self-defense. I mean, completely different. Talk about confusing. Should I stay on the balls of my feet and bounce around, or stay low and drive my heel into the floor? Boy, dropping to a knee with a spinning knife hand sure looks cool when we do 1-steps. I wonder why no one does that in forms, sparring, or self-defense. What's up with wrist locks? They work great with the rubber knives, but I can't grab anybody's hand when we spar. Is that even legal? Why does that black belt look so powerful when he does his forms, but keep getting kicked in the face when we spar? Why won't they let me wear a red uniform? Someday I will wear red. To be fair, my biggest gripe with Taekwondo was not the art. It was how the art was being taught in my school. 10 minutes of this, 15 minutes of that, 20 minutes of something else. Just when I was making progress in one set of skills, we'd switch to a different set of skills. It felt like TKD suffered from ADHD. which taught me an important lesson as a student and then later as a teacher. Sometimes the more you learn, the less you learn. Maybe that's why arts like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, boxing, or the sport of MMA in general have been growing in popularity. It's not that their techniques are necessarily more effective than any other arts. It might just be because they offer a more focused training experience. A focused training experience leads to more consistent skill development, which leads to more confidence, which leads to feeling great instead of confused and frustrated. Let me give you an example. If you check out a typical BJJ class, you're going to practice the same moves the same way throughout the entire class. The moves that you practice in warm-ups are the same moves you practice in drilling. And the moves you practice in drilling, you're going to use when you practice rolling. And guess what? When you come back to the next class, you're going to practice those same moves the same way all over again. Now, that sounds like such an obvious teaching methodology, doesn't it? Repetition. But not all arts do that. Many schools break up their art into jagged pieces that don't easily fit back together again. As a result, as a student, you can end up feeling like you're making slow progress, or worse, no progress. For the record, like BJJ, I found a very focused training experience in Aikido. Sure, lots of people love to make fun of Aikido for spending all of their time on a relatively small number of techniques. On the other hand, they spend all of their time on a small number of techniques. Even when we practiced with a jo or a sword, those movements were directly related to the empty hand techniques. As a result, when I would walk out of an Aikido class, those techniques really stuck with me. Now, unfortunately, where I felt Taekwondo offered too many skills to master, I felt that Aikido didn't offer me enough. So I quit that art too. But are you going to hear me bash Aikido? No. The fact is, I learned a lot of important lessons there too. So, to be clear, I have nothing but respect for every style of martial arts. Each one can teach you something, or many things. I'm also not saying that all traditional styles, Taekwondo, karate, kung fu, suffer from being four arts in one. Some schools are excellent at building connections between forms and drills and sparring and self-defense. But years ago, when I was searching for a more focused Taekwondo school, I couldn't find one. Thankfully, I eventually found styles and, more importantly, teachers who made me happy. Which styles were those? It doesn't matter. That's my martial arts journey, not yours. I would prefer if you took a moment to ask yourself, am I getting what I want out of my style, my school, and my teacher? If you are, then stay right there. Work as hard as you can for as long as you can. But if you're not getting what you want, hey, no hard feelings. Take a look around and see if you can find a style or a school that will help you meet your goals. Just remember this, you don't have to hate where you are to be excited about where you're going. Everything is worth something. If you like this video, thanks for subscribing to the channel and sharing with a friend. Until next time, stay focused, my friend, and keep fighting for a happy life.